This is Gamble Quest, where we discuss all things gambling, poker, blackjack, roulette, dice. It doesn't matter. If you're gambling on it, we discussing it. Let's go on this journey together as we educate ourselves on the gambling world. What's up, everybody? This is Emmanuel at Gamble Quest, and today we're going to be interviewing Bobby. He's a local poker player here in the Tampa Bay area, and we're just going to talk a little bit about poker and his introduction to poker and how his journey is going so far. First thing I want to say is, Bobby, thank you for taking time out your day and having a conversation with me about the game that we both of us love playing and we enjoy playing. My first question to you, Bobby, is what was your introduction to poker? How did it start? How did you get started in the poker?
It's a good question. I guess I didn't have the money maker effect like a lot of others did. You know, when I was growing up, I always had a fascination with any games that was really coming out of the deck, right? You know, hearts, even things like Yahtzee, just playing that. And then I guess my real kickoff was watching Rounders.
Okay.
You know, I saw Rounders and I was just hooked with Edward Norton and Matt Damon. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like it's always one of two stories. It's the moneymaker effect and then it's Rounders, right? For me, it was Rounders. The first WSOP I watched actually wasn't moneymaker. It was the year after. It was Raymer.
Uh-huh.
So for me, after watching Rounders and a bunch of I think I was in high school. Pretty sure I was in high school at the time.
Mm-hmm.
First time I saw it. And then, you know, a bunch of my friends would just get together and just start playing. And I mean, we weren't playing the right way. You know, we would just, you know, get whatever we could, just start playing with that. So then just go from there. And that's pretty much how I got started. And then all my friends start falling off with it. And I just kept going and just never stopped.
Okay, Bobby, what do you consider yourself? A professional, like a serious recreational player, or what do you?
I would say at this point, I would say serious recreational player. I wouldn't say pro because I'm not doing as many hours I think a pro should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I consider it like my part-time job. So, for example, you know, last year I think I did rounds. I actually came in short for where I wanted to be, but I think I did around 950 hours instead of the 1,000 hours or what I wanted to get to. But we got hit with those hurricanes. So, you know, Derby was shut down for like a month and then obviously holidays, things like that. So I would say serious recreational player more than anything else, just because, you know, I'm not doing 2,000 hours and, you know, I still have my main source of income, everything else. And so I do this kind of on the side.
Mm-hmm. I totally get it. So how often do you play now?
I'm probably doing around average about 20 hours a week. Probably a little bit more than that. So I think I'm on pace for around, I try to get to about 85 to 90 hours a month if I want to stay on, you know, task for what I want to, you know, be around the 1,000-hour mark for the year.
Okay.
So I'm in there about 4 or 5 times a week after I get done work.
Okay. What's your game of choice? Is it because I know I met you and I've seen you playing No Limit Hold'em. Is that your game of choice? Is that the game?
Yeah. So I did dabble with Omaha for a bit, but Omaha is it's a roller coaster ride, and it's just too much with the swings. And I know, you know, if you can get a niche in Omaha, you can make a lot of money doing it because not a lot of people are studied up on it. But for me, I just kind of stuck with Hold'em. I did start out as a tournament player. I got away from tournaments just because, I mean, the tournament grinds. Only 10% of the field gets paid. You're sitting there for 12 to 14 hours a day. You may not even get anything. You may break even. It's really, you know, top 3% of the field really gets real money. So I got away from tournaments and I just went over to cash and studied up more on that and, you know, the hourly rate. And it's just less grueling. And I get, you know, you're not stuck there for 12 hours a day if you do get stuck in a tournament. So for me right now, it's just Texas Hold'em solely. I have thought about maybe studying up more on Omaha, but, you know, Derby doesn't really support Omaha that much. So the more normal game that I'm able to do with the hours I want to do is Hold'em at this point. Okay. But yeah, it's always been Hold'em.
Okay. So you started out in tournaments. Well, that was the thing you did before you started playing cash game. How did you get involved with the tournaments? Like, how did you get exposed to tournaments? You know, opposed to cash games?
Well, how did I get started with tournaments?
Yeah. How did you
Because that was actually, I
like
mean,
me?
that was back in
I
high
started
school.
playing cash. Started playing cash games. A guy at my job, we just started playing poker together. Just joking around, playing free time, and then I just started playing cash game from there. So how did you like start playing tournaments?
Well, tournaments actually with back in high school with my friends. My buddies would call me up, hey, come over. We're doing a $10 tournament. They gave you 25 chips, and you just started out that way. And then we didn't really do much cash. So when I was, finally became of age to be in a casino, I would just I wouldn't buy in for a lot of money, right? They'd be like the $100 tournament, the $200 tournament, whatever, and just start playing these daily tournaments. And then, whenever you either, you lose quick at that or you win, and then, oh, hey, look, they have a bunch of cash games going. Let me go play that because what's the difference? And then you just start sitting down, but there is a big difference. It is two different games. But then, I don't know. I got more comfortable in cash. Obviously you can make a lot more. I mean, you can make money a lot more quicker, right, on an hourly basis. And then the games are just always available. You can leave whenever you want. You're not stuck there. If emergency comes up, you can just leave. You know what I mean? It's just to set the hours more. Just got a lot more leeway with cash, and obviously, you don't have to go through 1,000 people to try and make any money.
True.
Right. So it was just a simple progression of just, I was always in the casino. So once the tournaments were over or I lost or whatever, I would just go over and just keep playing.
Okay. And your opinion, what's the biggest difference between no limit tournament cash games and no limit hold'em tournaments? I meant.
Well, you get to be a lot more selective in your hands in cash game, right? Because there's no blinds. You're not forced. The action isn't forced. So you get to be a lot more selective. You get to select a lot more premiums, and you get to really pick your positions when you do that. In tournaments, I feel like tournaments, obviously, you don't have the time to just sit around, so you have to play less quality hands. Position is everything in tournaments, and I mean, I would say patience as well, but it's not, because you need to have patience in cash game as well. But I would say that just hand selection, I would say the biggest difference, and you're also you try and avoid flips in tournaments. I mean, if you can, but you just, you can never go a whole tournament and avoid the flips, right? And you're going to have to get in those flips and then just leave it up to the poker gods.
Yeah.
But, in cash game, you have a lot more dictation of what you're going to do per hand than you can in tournaments. Sometimes, the hand just plays itself. I mean, obviously that happens in cash as well, but you're just forced into so many different situations because of the blinds.
Okay. Gotcha. What was your biggest tournament win?
So I've never played like the really big ones. I always kind of kept it on the circuit. I think the biggest we did at SHOP. Actually, when my first year here, I spent a lot of time at the Hard Rock. I actually used to be on their website a lot, but they they did my chop the wrong way for me only. But I think it was around 10 or 11 grands that we chopped up. And I think it was like a $400 buy-in. I took that. I was happy with it. I never really scored that big in tournaments. I always kind of crap out in the final table, but yeah, it was always like it was never like the big events, the $2,000 buy-ins, this and that. It was always like the $400 or $500 buy-ins, and then play it out. So I think it was 10 or 11,000 on a chop. I think we did like a 6-way chop.
Okay, that's good. Hey, a win is a win. That's the way I always look at it. I don't care if you win $5, $10. If you're coming in and you're leaving with more money than you came with, that's a win.
Oh, of course, especially in tournaments. It's such a grind.
Definitely. What do you do to improve your game? Do you watch videos? Do you do coaching? Do you get coaching? Do you study like solvers? What type of?
I try and study the solver. I actually think I was thinking about this the other day that I need to get back and just restudy the solver more, like on a daily basis, as opposed to, because I was doing it when I've had long stints of poker, and then I've taken some time off from poker, and then I get back into poker. So I've been back in the poker for about a year and a half now, and before I got back into it.
Bobby, but before you go further, can you kind of explain to, like, let's say for people that's not so much familiar with what a solver is, can you kind of give a basic example of what is a solver?
The way I was using the solver, I know people get, actually a lot of the solvers you have to pay for. And then you can put it in situations, but and then you can characterize, the range of hands that's, your opponent has, and this and that. And there's a lot more intricate solvers that people are using. I'm not the way that I want to use the solver, because again, in our games, the 1-3 at Derby, which pretty much plays like a 2-5, but you don't want to overthink it. So the solver that I more so studied was more so about pre-flop ranges and your position based on that, and then dealing with 3-bets. And then, obviously, if someone in this position 3-bet me in this position in my open range, should this a hand I should continue with? So it's more so about pre-flop things than after that. They have solvers that really break down, flop action, turn, river. I haven't been doing that. I haven't gone that in depth because, again, I don't want to overthink it too much at the level that we're at Derby. But so it's been more pre-flop, and I don't do a pure GTO style. I do kind of a combination between GTO and exploitative, because I think just for this level, that's more appropriate. Because GTO only really works as everybody's playing GTO. And as you know, at Derby, in the games that we play in, there's people that are pretty much putting their whole stacking without looking at their cards. So it's no point of being like, oh, he opened from this spot, this should be his range. GTO only really works effectively if everybody's doing that. And since we aren't, you have to play kind of a mix of both.
Okay.
Right. So I did more so of like pre-flop ranges and position, and then based on 3-bets and then 4-bets. But that's as far as I got when it came to that. I'm actually looking into maybe purchasing the solvers and getting more in depth when it comes to flop action, turn, rivers, to really do the full study. But again, I mean, I don't think any human can do all that data when it comes to all that in every situation. Okay. So you just try and get, you really just want to work on the principles and then go from there.
Okay. So, opposed to solvers, do you just go over your hands? Do you watch videos?
Well, when I come home, I'm always on YouTube. I'm always looking at, other cash games. I'm always, when I got back into it, I started following Jonathan Little a lot. And he does a bunch of YouTube videos of more like instructional, like he breaks down hands, and then he'll go into other things. He's got, obviously a bunch of content out there. So I started, more so just following his site and, his YouTube channel and the things that he does. And I like when he breaks down hands. He really goes into it. What everybody that on our level hate when all these pros and the guys that are coaches are always like, it depends on the players, but they're absolutely right. Everything that you do in poker is really dependent on players and who's in the hands with you. And you have to be able to classify them as a player and then go through everything else.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this question, Bob. When you sit down at a table, how long do you think it takes before you can identify who you're playing against? So you're playing against, like, for instance, how long does it take for you for, let's say, okay, this guy's loose, this guy's a little more tighter, this guy seems like he's a little more balanced. How long does it take you normally to see, like, kind of characterize people at the table?
You mean if I were to sit down in a random game and not know anybody?
Yes.
An hour. Honestly, an hour. If that much. If I see two hands from a guy that's opening up, 9-6 suited from under the gun, like, okay, this guy is just crazy, right?
Yeah.
But if I, sometimes I also understand you can't just judge somebody on one hand. But if I see him do that 2-3 times in 20 minutes, you get a pretty much, okay, this guy's not doing that. In 20-30 minutes, if I see a guy that hasn't played a hand yet, okay, he's going to be more on the tight side probably. But it's always, once you get to start seeing them open, obviously show their hands, it's like, okay, this is how you're playing. This is what you're doing. I get to, label you as, a loose aggressive player or a tight aggressive player, or just, I call it a stone, trying to get water from a stone, older person that only plays the nuts.
Yes.
And it doesn't take me long to figure out, who's who.
Okay. Do you have any any pregame rituals, anything before you go sit down at the table and play your session? Do you meditate? I know I heard some people say they meditate, they kind of just go over hands. What do you do before you start playing your session?
I don't meditate. I don't have the mind for meditation. I'll tell you that much. My mind's just always going 1,000 miles an hour. I can tell you my old ritual. It used to be watch rounders, but that was 20 years ago. I don't really have a ritual.
Okay.
I do listen to a song from where I the bus and go to the casino, and that like time difference. I always listen to the same song just to like get myself in the mood. But other than that, I don't really have a ritual. I just kind of just get in there and find a good seat and go from there.
Okay. Okay.
Do you have a ritual?
Not. I mean, sometimes like okay. Let me tell you what I do. Is I just think about the overall picture on what I think about the players in the player pool. Like, I always tell myself the majority of the time people are not bluffing. So maybe don't call down as light. I try to tell myself to be aggressive because it seems like the more aggressive you are, just the more to me, you just give yourself more opportunity when you're more aggressive. I just try to tell myself a few things before I sit down and play. I try to tell myself don't tilt because I'm prone to tilt really easy. I just try to remind the things that help me play good. I try to just put that in my mind before I sit down at the table. It's really not a ritual. It's maybe just words that I say.
Mindset.
Huh?
That sounds like more of a mindset thing, which is
Yes.
obviously probably the best thing you can do. So on a mindset thing, I always do whisper to myself in my head. It's just play each hand to the best of my ability. That's it. Put myself in the best position, and that's it. Whether it be folding or bluffing or going for value, just play each hand to the best of my ability. And I'll say that to myself. I will say this about tilt. This is going to be weird. This is going to sound cocky to say. I actually don't go on tilt anymore. I feel like I just became so numb to everything. I want people to think I'm tilting so that they'll overcall. But I got into the right headspace, and it took a long time to do this, but I really don't tilt. Yeah, like, you're not going to see me take a bad beat and then start opening 9-5 suited. You know what I mean? And just start going nuts.
Yeah.
But I definitely get mad at the table. Don't get me wrong.
But to me, I'm like, sometimes different things tilt me. It can't be sometimes just when the game is just playing so tight, sometimes that tilts me. When it's not action, sometimes that tilts me. Sometimes it's not about me taking a beat or whatever. Just certain things that I shouldn't let tilt me. It does sometimes.
You just start getting bored and a little anxious.
Yeah, I just get bored. Yeah.
That's when the good thing about cash is that you get to switch tables, right? You just get in a transfer. If you're sitting at the rock table, and we've all been at that table, it's like, okay, what am I doing here? Because I'm only gonna lose money at this table. I'm never gonna win. I could open ace king suited, and I know if I get 2 callers out of these guys, I'm screwed, right?
Yeah.
So it's just you just switch tables. I mean, when I got back into poker, I made very few changes, but those changes made the world of difference. I think one of the biggest changes I made was table selection, and then seat selection after that. So I used to, wherever they put me, that's where I was at, and that's wrong. You really need to find the good tables and switch to that. And then when you're on that table, try and find a better seat. You want tighter guys to your left, right, and you want the loose, aggressive people, the fish, the whales to your right, because the first 2 people on your right, you just have such a huge advantage on them.
True.
So the minor changes, but again, those changes made all the difference. So for example, and again, if I got sat at the rock table, all the older gentlemen that really just don't play hands, I would sit that out. But you're never going to make real money there. So you want to instantly transfer. And there's someone that is really bad action for you, get off that table, right? So it's table selection was a really kind of a game changer for a few different reasons.
Okay. So one of the biggest things that improved your game was selecting the correct table to play at, and the seat.
Oh yeah. Once you get to that table, I mean, again, position in poker is everything, right? So if you can, obviously you don't want to make it too obvious. You don't want to try to insult anybody. But if you see someone gets up and you're like, wow, that's a great seat. I got these 2 guys to my right. I got these 2 guys to my left. I'm taking that seat, right? So it just makes all the difference. I mean, you've seen it a couple of times. All 3 people will change at one time, and then it screws up the whole dynamic. But seat selection is everything.
Absolutely. Bobby, how do you, because poker, you have times where you win, you have times where you lose. How do you deal with downswings?
Going through, I can't say a downswing right now because I'm still up, but I don't deal with it well. I grew up a very, very competitive person, so I take every loss pretty hard, but it's just about getting home and then just decompressing. Like if I took a bad loss, I don't do anything poker. I just want to go home, just do something completely opposite and just get my mind off of it and then just go right back into it the next day or the next time I'm playing. Downswings are tough. I mean, again, I had a margin of profits for a little bit, and I'm going through a little bit of, I want to say, a downswing now that my profits have gone down from where they were, but still not losing. So I can't say complete downswing, but I actually started tracking this week. I'm at 15 hours this week. I did 5 hours 3 days in a row. I've made one flush, 2 sets, and 2 straights in 15 hours of play.
Yeah.
And I'm down about, I don't want to say the number, but I'm down. And it's just like, it's infuriating. But there's nothing you can do because if you try to start forcing action, now you lost even more. Now you're compounding something that's going to take you more time to get out of. So it's grueling. It's really, really annoying when the cards you can't, it's the struggle to make a pair. And you have a guy at your table that's playing blind and hitting top pair on every other hand. And it's like, how do I play against you? I have no idea what to do. And things have been pretty bad this month. And I'm like looking at the monster under the bed. It's like every time I'm in a hand, I'm like, he has it. He's got quads. Might as well. I actually walked in the quads the other day, but they don't have quads. And he's just playing there with ace high. And he's trying to bluff you. And you just got to pick off the bluff. But it's grueling. Honestly, and I give this advice to everybody, it stinks when these times happen, but you just got to just power through it. I mean, it's going to offset at a certain point. Luckily for me, I've made the times I have hit a hand really count. So like this downswing, again, I'm not in the minus category for this month, but it's still just this. Definitely times you want to come home and just like banging your head against the wall. Like, why? Like, you see everybody else hit high hands. Last year, and I'm there a lot. I didn't hit a high hand until November. It took me 11 months to hit one high hands.
Wow.
I just do not get the high hands. But again, I'm able to, when I do hit a hands, capitalize on that. And obviously, you can't rely on hands to make money, but it's definitely a lot easier when you can actually make a hand or cooler somebody and this and that. And the bluffs aren't going to make you real money, right? So, and especially in our games, when everybody's just a station, they're going to call you no matter what. So I didn't answer that appropriately, but downswings are tough, and you just got to.
No, you answered it. You said you kind of like getting away. You don't want to think about poker. You kind of just want to do something totally opposite from poker.
I do. My YouTube feed will show up, and it's always poker stuff. I'm like, no, just put something, put politics on, put Fortnite stuff on. I don't care what it is. Put something mind-numbing on there, so I don't have to think. Just do some work, like after-hour work. Just do something. Just I don't want to look at poker until the next time I have to play.
Okay. See, one thing I do like about Hard Rock opposed to Derby is if I'm running bad and hold them, I can jump over the PLO. I can. It just at Hard Rock it just kind of gives you a little bit more options, and Derby just like no limit hold 'em, no limit hold 'em. So that's kind of like why I like Hard Rock a little bit better. It's just because you just got more games. I think it's better players at Hard Rock for the majority of part, but you just get so many more options with games. If you're running bad in one game, you can go to another game. That's kind of like why I like Hard Rock.
No, I would say the Rock is way better than the Derby. The reason why I do Derby as religiously as I do is just because of distance. So I live downtown St. Pete. Derby Lane's it's right there compared to going all the way over the bridge, all the way to Tampa. When I was living in Tampa, I lived at the Hard Rock.
Yeah.
I actually really like the Hard Rock. And again, as you just said, there are a lot of different games. Sometimes you get pitched, they're only the 1-3 is pretty much, it's the 1-2 and the 1-3 at Derby. And again, the 1-3 plays like a 2-5, right? It's a lot of 1-3. The 1-3 game used to be capped at 300. We're playing in a game that's the minimum is 300 and 1500 is the max. Right? That's not a 1-3 game. The 5-10 used to be capped at 1,000, right? If you think about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was always like 100 big blinds. So we're playing a super deep 1-3. Again, it's more of a 2-5 at this point. But that's all they have. I mean, when's the last time you saw the 2-5 run at Derby Lane?
I haven't seen it. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
Like Hard Rock, I don't think they ever probably have less than 4 or 5 games going for 2-5.
True. Yeah. They also.
I would say that when you start hitting certain levels, 5-10 to 10-20, at the Hard Rock, that the skill level is going to go way up. Those guys are, true grinders.
Yeah.
You're going to have some difficulties at that level against them. But I always preferred the Rock. I do like their room, especially when they redid it. I think the Rock has a great room and a great setup. I haven't been there in a while, so I don't know if everything still is like the well-oiled machine. But when I was first there, and this was a while ago, it was 9-10 years ago, and I was doing it religiously, I thought everything was great. But again, Derby is more about it is good 1-3 games, and it is really convenient for me to get to.
Yeah. One thing I do like about the Derby, opposed to Hard Rock, is the social aspect. I think at Derby, people are more friendly. You can have more conversations. Because, yeah, we're there to make money, but at the same time, you can enjoy at the table, talking to people. You can learn about people. So that's the aspect I like about Derby opposed to Hard Rock. It seems like when I go to Hard Rock, it seems like people are a little bit more serious. So that's this.
See, I don't want to for the most part, I don't want to make friends at the poker table. I want to go in there, play. It's a business. But you're right. I mean, Derby's a little bit different. We all know each other.
Yeah.
It's the same people a lot.
Yes.
So there's pretty much no avoiding it. So yes. I've definitely made a bunch of friends at Derby, and then you get in the hands with them. You're like, it's like, in this part, I would do something else, but now, we've known each other for 9 months. We've drank together. We've told each other personal stories. How do I bluff you off this hand? You know what I mean? So
okay, so your thing is you try not to make friends. You think
in the beginning I was definitely trying not to make friends.
You think it helps you play better?
I think it helps me play better, that I just want to be in my own head playing the game and analyzing what everybody's doing at any given time, as opposed to, oh, wow, we're friends. We're having a personal conversation. I'm seeing you outside of the poker room, and now I have to see you where I consider this my part-time job, trying to make money. And how do I bluff my friend off this pot? Yeah. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, it gets a little tough at that. Right. Yeah. So when I first got back into it, I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And then I had the dealers and players making fun of me for not talking to anybody, taking it too seriously. And then you open up, and then you have a beer with Sammy at the table, and things change.
Definitely. So Bobby, what's the biggest stakes you've played?
Biggest stakes? I used to do the 5-10 at Borgata.
Okay.
So I grew up right outside of Atlantic City, and I loved Atlantic City. There was like a glory age of Atlantic City, and I feel like that's no longer the case. But Borgata, I love that room, and I used to play the 5-10 there pretty religiously. I forget what the minimum was. I know the max was around 2,500. I used to sit down with 15, and I just did really well in that game. And I used to love how Borgata would treat you too. The floor guy, they had the main floor, and then there was the back section of the higher limit rooms. And once you got back there was another floor guy. And he would see me and automatically put me on the list. Come get me. He's like, you want to be at this table, take care of you. You tip that guy. I used to love that service as well. That doesn't happen at Derby. That doesn't happen at the Rock, really. And it was just a different level of service. But Borgata, I'm not sure if you've ever been there. Borgata's poker room is massive.
No, I've never been. That's in Jersey, right?
Yeah, it's in Jersey. But
I've been to Vegas. I've never been to Jersey.
I think they have every room beat in Vegas.
Okay.
I haven't been to every room in Vegas, and I haven't been to Vegas in, I want to say, about 8 years. I actually was disappointed the first time I went to Vegas. First time I went to Vegas, my dad took me for my 21st birthday. And what I was disappointed is I went to as many casinos as I could. I just wanted to see their poker rooms. Like, this is going to be different, yada yada. They all had very, very small rooms, and only
they do.
About 5 to 6 tables. I was like, what? This is supposed to be the poker mecca. Like, where is everything? Yeah. Where's everything at? That was my biggest disappointment of that trip, is that, where's the poker room? And then I found we were staying at the Bellagio, and then I checked out Bobby's room, and that became, if I ever go to Vegas, I'm playing in Bobby's room. It's I mean, it's not a big room, and there's like tables on top of tables,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the place to be for me. But I was, the first time I was there, I was very disappointed with the poker room sizes and
Yeah.
just limit of game. And I was like, wow. I had a great trip. I mean, we went golf. I mean, I got nuked out there because I'm very fair skinned and desert weather is different.
Yeah.
But it was a great first trip.
Yeah. So did you gamble with your dad?
My dad doesn't gamble. He's actually against gambling.
Okay.
I did gamble, and my first trip did not go well in Vegas. I did lose everything I brought with me, I think. Which is funny because the first time I really played in a legal casino was 18. It was 18 to play. It was an Indian Raz up in Turning Stone. Have you ever heard of Turning Stone?
Mm-hmm.
It's upstate New York. And the first time I played there, I won a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's always been against gambling. So when I came home, I went right into his room and I showed him my winnings. And he's like, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened. And I was like, why is that? It's like, because you won your first time. Now you're never going to stop. You're going to think this is going to happen every time.
Okay.
And he was right, because then, you go back, you lose. You're like, oh no, what happens? And then, but I've never gone down, the gambler cycle. I always play within my means.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I got back into poker, I didn't go directly to 1-3. I didn't want to play with my money. So I did take a selection of my money out. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to grind 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
And I grinded 1-2 for about 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I hit a number that I was okay with and then using for the 1-3, then I made the transfer back. But
Okay.
grinding 1-2 is terrible, especially with their rake. Oh my God, it's awful.
Tell me this, Bobby. What's the difference between a 1-2? Because the 1-2 at Derby. What's the biggest difference between the 1-2 and the 1-3 at Derby?
Well, obviously, the biggest thing is probably obviously the buy-in, and there's only $1 difference on the rake. So the rake at the 1-2 game is $9, which is really high. Mm-hmm. And then 1-3, it's capped at the 10. Mm-hmm. And I'm including the bonus and the rake, right? Because at the end of the day, that's still money they're taking out of the pot.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you got guys at 1-2. The minimum is $60, right? Mm-hmm. And the max is $300. But show me you pick one guy or maybe two that's buying it for the max. I mean, there's been times that I was buying in I always bought it for the max because I just wanted to have everybody covered. So at any point I could just jam, get as much money as possible. Mm-hmm. But there's people, half the table would sit there with $60 and then milk that $60 stack down to nothing. Mm-hmm. So if you do get them in the hand, you're not really making anything. I actually did 1-2 the other day, just waiting for my seat. Guy milked the stack down to $35. We got it all in. I won. I made $25 in that hand after, $26 after that, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's a lot less noticeable at 1-3 because, again, the minimum is $300. The max is $1,500. So if you win, people aren't letting their stacks run down to $50. Mm-hmm. There's the occasional person that still does, right? But a lot of guys are capping back up or just doing the full rebuy or whatever because that's the more appropriate way to play. And it's less noticeable. I mean, the rake is still there. The rake is still a problem. Mm-hmm. But in the hands that you win, you're making just so much more.
True.
Right? Because there are more people involved. You are deeper in stacks. So creating real money at 1-2 is against the rake with what people are buying in for is I mean, I have no words to describe that, right? But at 1-3, I mean, you can make substantial money at 1-3.
Okay. Let's just talk about this real quick. I don't want to get too deep into, how much money you got or whatever. But how do you deal with bankroll management? Because you said you got to a certain number before you moved up to 1-3. Is it the number of buy-ins that you want, or can you kind of go?
I don't want to get too specific, just in case.
I don't want to get too.
Uncle Sam's always watching, right? But no, I got to a certain amount of buy-ins. I knew the number of what my buy-in I wanted to be when I got back to 1-3, and then I had in my head how many buy-ins I wanted. Mm-hmm. Right, so that's the number I took out of the 1-2 winnings, and I said if I lost this, I'd go back to 1-2, grind that money back. If I grind that money back, I'd do the same thing all over again. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I didn't run into that problem because then when I hit 1-3, I just hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. So I track everything. Mm-hmm. Not everything. So I take that back. I'm not like, some people track what they tip the the cocktail waitress, like, oh, this wasn't winning, but I blah blah blah. No, I track per day, per month, and then I have like a master list for the year.
Mm-hmm.
So I have pretty much to the number. I round down actually just to have some access. I round down the numbers, but and to keep it easy, because who wants to put the 42 in? I put the 45 or the 40, or you know what I mean. But I track everything that way.
Okay.
And then so yesterday plus minus, and I put the date, and then everything's like that. And at the end of the month, I do big blinds per 100 hands, and I do hourly rate, and then I do percentage of how many times I went, how many times I won, to see like how many times I show up, where am I at percentage wise, of winning, and then I do all the stats that way, and then again I throw that onto the yearly list, so then I have my numbers.
Okay.
And if I ever got to the point, I like to consider myself more of a smart gambler. If I get to a point that things aren't profitable anymore, maybe it's time to take a break or stop for a little bit, take take some time and reassess, put money where it needs to be. But things have been going, again, I'm a little bit on downswing when it comes to profit margin, but things are still going well, so it's worth to still do. But everything is tracked. A lot of poker players like to lie about, oh, I'm at this, but you're not tracking your losses and blah, blah, blah. I track everything to the letter. So I know within like a couple of dollars of where I am. So that's why I track the bankroll. And as long as it's still profitable, you keep doing it. Yeah. I mean, there's always a rule of thumb about where you want to be buy-in wise for any allotted game. I think the rule of thumb is around like 30 buy-ins. That's, if you're going to make the step up, be secure for 30 buy-ins. And that's also one of the other changes I made. I don't wait to, wither down and felt before I rebuy, right? Like I always like to cap up to like where I want my buy-in to be, because if you do get the hand, that's how you're going to be, getting that money. Or there's times if you lose your original buy-in, maybe buying it for two, there's always those options to do it that way, which I don't do that often, but there are times I do. If I'm in a good game, I'll get it for the max and just try and leverage the stack. But that's how I more so do bankroll management. I document everything.
Everything. Okay. Just all right. We're gonna get ready to wrap it up here in a second. I just what would your advice be for somebody that's trying to move from 1-2 to the next level?
Well, I guess that would start with the bankroll manager, right? Make sure you're comfortable with taking whatever you want your buy-in to be times by 30. Make sure you have that money, and then I would say really play fundamentals, get a knack for it. Make sure you're comfortable with the swings. Because again, you look at raises when it comes to 1-2 to 1-3, it's a big difference, especially when it gets to the 3-bet, 4-bet range. And if you're not comfortable, go back down. I mean, I always recommend that people, take your shot. If you have the money, take the shot. But, you have to understand, if things aren't going your way or you just seem outmatched and you're confused, go back down. Right. Okay. There's no shame in ever going back down. The worst thing you can do is lose your entire roll at, you take that shot and then you lose your entire roll and then you're starting from scratch again just to go down.
Okay.
Right. So I always recommend people take the shot. Again, if they were running the 2-5 at Derby, I'd be moving up. If I was able to get the Hard Rock, I'd be moving up. But, since we don't really have that option from where we are, kind of have to just stay and do the grind from where we are.
Yeah.
But I always recommend for people I want to, again, if you're comfortable with it, you can get over that game and you start, I don't want to mention names, but you're playing with, 4 or 5 particular people that are just running you over. This is not the game for you, right? But that doesn't mean 1-3 is not the game for you. Maybe just get to a different table. And this keeps happening. It's like, you know what? Go back down to your comfort level then and just wait for another time to take that shot. But I'd always recommend to people, if you're comfortable, if you have fundamentals, if you know what you're doing, have the patience for it, know when the 3-bet bluff, know when the 4-bet bluff, know when the folds, and you're not playing like an idiot, always take that shot.
Gotcha. Hey, well, all right. Well, man, I really do appreciate you taking time out your day, man. I know people are busy, man, and I really do appreciate you talking with me, and just hope you continue moving up. Hope you continue winning. And, man, thank you again for taking time out your day.
Thanks for having me. Anytime you want me on, I'm more than happy to do
it.